Welcome, everybody, to Not Too Old Timers. I'm Brian,
And I'm Corey.
and we're two not too old timers sitting around telling stories and talking about things. Are we live?
We're live.
Are we rolling? We recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Last week we talked about meditation, and this week I think I'd like to talk about the differences in what it was like when we were young in the military and what it's like
Oh
now,
boy.
now that we're retired, the
Yo,
things
that's a
that
big
we've seen.
subject.
Yeah, and we don't need to get into the nitty gritty of it, but we've seen a lot of back and forth lately on the internet about this and that and this and that. There's a big subject now about taking away the morale patches and the reinforcement of standards now. But there's been a few things that I particularly would like to talk about. The differences of when you and I were in,
Mm-hmm.
and where we are now today. Um, so if is that all right?
I
I mean,
love
is
it,
that
dude. I
something
love
you?
that. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So when I joined,
But when did
this
you
is, and
join?
I'm just
When did
going
you
to give
join,
an.
Brian? You're about a decade older than me.
I came in October of 1991.
Okay. Wow, no shit. I came
So
in
I'm yes,
August of 2001. So
yeah.
we're
So we're
about
right
10 years
about
apart.
10
Yeah.
years. Yeah. So and feel free to chime in about the differences that you saw because there is a generation difference between
Oh,
you and
you
I.
were young during the Desert Storm piece.
I joined the DEP, the delayed enlistment program during Desert Storm.
Okay.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and then I came in. What was it? 6 months after.
Mm-hmm.
I actually went to basic training 6 months after. Um, after my delayed enlistment, not after Desert Storm. Desert Storm had been over for like a year, I think.
Yeah.
But so when I came in, it was the draw was you had the GI Bill, and then you had free health care and all that, and those types of things. And when I joined, I immediately went to Florida, and this will tell you the difference between you and I. My dorm room when I got to Herbert Field was um like an old 1950s building.
Mm-hmm.
It had communal showers still,
Mm-hmm.
communal bathrooms, and I had a roommate. And the room was so small that we had no choice but to have bunk beds.
Mm-hmm.
And it had like a little sink and a mirror in the room, but there was no bath, no toilet, no nothing like that. You had to walk down the hall, and it had bay showers. Like there was no individual showers. You walked into a bay. It was almost like basic training in tech school
Yeah, I was
where
gonna say that's the tech school dormitory life, tech training.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But this was my actual first duty station.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was there for probably close to a year, and then I ended up getting married and then moving out and things of that nature.
So it was like a real
But
harsh military lifestyle from the very beginning. That
well,
community, unity, peace,
right, harsh
where it all
to
sucked
you,
together. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but to me that was just how it was.
Right,
Now,
right, right.
don't get me wrong, there were new dorms on base that had a shared two-room shared one bathroom,
Hmm. Those were my future
but
dorms.
oh, okay, so yeah, so and my girlfriend at the time lived in one of those, so I stayed with her often so
Hmm.
that I could kind of get out of the archaic dorms, but that's all I really knew. Whereas, what did you have? That was that
Yeah, yeah. So
your
when I got to
experience or
my
what?
first duty assignment, which was overseas, um, the first dorm room, Air Force, we call them dorm rooms. Other military branches still refer to them as the barracks. But that was individual room, individual bed. And then I even had a little kitchenette, little tiny kitchenette area. But it was a shared bathroom set up with the neighboring room. So we always had a piss mate, right? And then later on, they would build dormitories like what's in Korea, where it was a quad. It was 4 rooms that shared a single large kitchen and shower toilet, right? But when I was sitting
Yeah, like a
in the
common
dorm room,
area,
a
right?
common area, yeah, when I was sitting in the
Yeah,
dorm room, the only thing that was shared with the community itself is what we called the day room, which was the community room where you had like the television or maybe some dartboards where you all got drunk and partied together, basically. You know.
right. Yeah. Yeah, my first dorm had a day room as well,
Hmm.
and it had the one base phone.
Oh yeah.
Each floor had their own day room, and you had the one phone because you couldn't get a phone in your room,
Mm.
but it had the base phone.
We had
So
phones
if
in
they
our
had a
room, landline
recall,
phones. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
If they had a recall, they called the day room, and somebody would go out and pick it up because we didn't have CQ back then.
Everyone knew if the phone rang, someone's got to
Yeah,
answer it. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So
If you
somebody would
didn't,
answer,
your whole
come get
fucking
your room.
floor would be on fire.
Yeah,
Yeah, first
exactly,
sergeant
yeah.
coming in.
Yeah. Um, so that was my experience, and the airmen now they have basically, like you were talking about, they have the living pods, which are there are 4 rooms. Each of them have their own individual bathroom and sleeping area, but then they share a common area with the 4 rooms, which is a living room, kitchen, and then washer and dryer.
Right. Some still have a
So
setup like mine. Some have a setup like yours still too, right? There's a place on base here where the army is in control of it, and it's 4 individuals to a single room. And so that room I
yeah,
had to myself, the army puts 4 people in, right? And so there's definitely a
wow,
difference of living standard even today
yeah,
between
yeah,
the branches, the army and the Air Force, like huge living
yeah.
standard difference.
Yeah, yeah. It's gotten better, throughout the years. But you constantly hear about certain bases, mainly army bases, where they're fighting with the mold
Mm-hmm.
in that base housing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, and even my experience when I moved over here, um, I lived in base housing for the first year I was here, and it was 1950s cinder block house.
Yep.
You still see them on
They're
base
still here.
sometimes.
They've just renovated them several times over, but the structure's
Yeah,
still there. Yeah.
but yeah, there's no, the house that I lived in is still on base. It's
Mm-hmm.
still up,
It's that one next
and
to the
people are
gate,
living
right?
in
I
it.
think it's up on the top of the hill by the
Yeah,
gate. Yeah,
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 gate
yeah. So
3.
I know it.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that place.
yeah. No insulation. No, it still had the old 1950s single pane windows.
Mm-hmm.
So during the summer, the central AC didn't do shit,
Yeah.
and during the winter, the heater wouldn't keep any of the heat in. It just sucked, and it had 50s plumbing and things like that. Um, so although the Air Force still invests a significant amount of money into housing and the bases themselves, uh,
It doesn't keep
I
up.
understand that that's just a small portion of their actual budget.
Yeah.
So I get that. They're doing the best they can with what they've got. Um, but that was so that was to start off with, that was kind of where we're at. The thing for me that really changed was in 1997, I believe it was. They had come out with the tattoo standards, and as you know, I'm heavily
You already had
tattooed.
sleeves?
Um, yeah,
Mhm.
so it basically said I had to have long sleeves at all times.
Right. Right. That was still applicable when I
Um,
came in.
right, yeah. So short sleeves blues, I could just throw them away because I could never wear them again.
Right.
Um, if I took my BDU blouse off, I had to have Under Armour
Yeah.
long sleeve
Yeah.
shirts on under my t-shirt
Long underwear
so that my
underneath.
tattoos wouldn't
Mhm.
show. Yeah. Um, so the idea that the standards are always going to stay the same, it doesn't work that way. They're constantly being reevaluated, um, and things of that nature. And then as it was still that way when I retired, but as of recently, they'd kind of lifted some of the you know more they became less strict on a lot of those things between haircuts
Especially
and,
tattooing. Tattooing became a
yeah,
lot less
tattoos.
strict because it's
Yeah, you could show
large
them.
military American especially. There's large American culture into tattooing. And then there's, you know, it's
Yeah.
always been a large culture within the military for tattooing. So put those two together, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's kind of, and kind of more to your point is that back in the 90s, tattoos were not that popular.
No, not
To see
as it is
somebody that was
today.
yeah, to see somebody that had sleeves or half sleeves was very odd in the military. You might see one or two on the forearm or whatever, but to see somebody that was completely sleeved was very weird.
Mm-hmm.
But it started to become more popular. That's kind of why they banned it.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Hey, you
Here's a
can't do this,
popular
and if you do
movement.
it,
Yeah, we're
yeah,
gonna have to shut that
um,
down.
right."
Time to
But
piss off
then,
the troops.
yeah, so the idea that troops of these days, when something is changed or taken away from them, they feel like it's
Why are
like
you
going to kill
punishing me?
morale.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that troops these days have kind of forgotten that this is not a me mentality. You
Mm-hmm.
should not have a me mentality in the military.
Particularly in the
It's
military,
a
it is not an I
yeah, it's a yeah,
place.
it's a team.
Mm-hmm.
It's a team effort. We're not individuals. We are a unit. You can have your individuality. Yeah, great. Um, but just, try to remember that w- yeah. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of it's just what I'm seeing in the news and on the internet and things like that. And well, you and I, when we used to go to dinner on Tuesdays, remember how I used to just lose my shit every time I'd go
And
through the
I would
gate and see
and
somebody with
yeah, and I would still be active
a
duty, and
full
you'd be like,
beard?
"Dude, what's going the fuck on with your
Yeah.
airmen?" Not my airmen in particular, but
Yeah.
yours, use guys, airmen. Oh, dude, it used to drive me insane. So we got to get to that point, right? Is this from Brian's entry to the military and the changes that he went through to the point to where he separated, my entry in the military in 2001 to the point to where I separated, it was an entirely new military each time, right? The military you
Yeah.
entered was
Yeah.
not the military you exited, and that was a hard realization for me too. Was the military I entered was not the military that I exited, and I was fed up with so much. I was like, this is ridiculous. This is not something that I need to have an issue with. This is not something that needs to be an issue, needs to be a problem. It should be something that I should shut down immediately, right? Standards are standards. You hold the standards, period, point blank, right? But there was a
Right.
point to where in my journey, particularly at the end, where the standard was written and then the standard would be not upheld because of personal feelings. Oh, it'll make people feel bad, or it's putting
Yeah.
concentration on one
Yeah.
person, or whatever excuse you want to put behind it. It was people not enforcing the standards, right? And so they
Right.
would change the standards in order to try to fit where the people wanted, which, when you really think about that, the military was changing how they operated, how they instilled discipline in order to better suit the people,
Right.
not the
Not the
other way
mission.
around, not the mission,
Yeah.
not the success, not the unity, right? And so when you really look at that, there was a lot of destructive behavior in the military. Like, I couldn't believe it when they changed regulations to allow individuals to have hair dye of various any fucking thing, and people started showing up looking like fucking mushrooms. And I was just like, what is
Yeah.
going on right here? Like, it clearly states natural. That ain't fucking natural. And the argument was being made, even, I'm telling you, even from the first sergeant level coming down, there's somebody's hair that is natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think more to your point is that it turned into more morale was more important.
Right. Right.
Individual morale was more
Individualism
important than the mission.
became more important than unity, right? Than
Right.
uniformity,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
Uniformity means that
And
it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what your background is. We're all going to be the same. We're all going to have to go through this suck together, and it's going to suck equally, right? Uniformity. But
but if we're going
but
through
it
it
didn't do that
together,
anymore. It stopped doing that,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was one of the things that I noticed, and That didn't happen in my generation. You're right, because when I retired in 14, the military was kicking people out left and right for the
Still.
minorest of shit
Yeah.
because of sequestration.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, global war on terror was over
Right.
basically at
It
that
was
point,
a wind down. It
2014.
was a drawdown. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so they were getting rid of the GWAT
And a
money,
lot
so
of
it
good
was all
people,
like,
I'm telling you, a
yeah,
lot of good people got out at that time, man. We hurt, we were hurting bad after that because so many
yeah,
good people took the opportunity and said, I don't have to put up with this bullshit. I'm going to go out and I'm going to be successful on my own adventure. I'm being given
yeah.
a great opportunity right now to get out and to separate and do these things. I'm going to go do those things. Right.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's part of the problem is that they had cut so many people that they realized they could no longer do the mission.
Which
So they said, "Okay,
ramped
we got
up
to get
things again,
people in."
but it ramped up
Yeah,
in the wrong ways.
right. Well, the only way they could get people to come in was
Flood.
to change the way the Air Force worked.
Yeah.
We're speaking just for the Air Force because we don't. I don't know how the Marine Corps or the Army or anybody else did
Well,
it, but as
it
far as
all
the Air
bleeds
Force,
over. It all bleeds over. However, I think what we're talking about started with Air Force and bled out, right?
yeah.
I can very
How do I
much
want
see
to
the
put this?
problems that we're talking about, the issues that we're talking about, really did ramp up internal to the Air Force.
Right.
The
Um,
feelings
it-
based military, feelings based direction,
yeah,
the
yeah.
airmen
We turned
actually
the Air Force and
directing what we were going to do. Like the morale patches you
right,
mentioned. Morale patches became a thing because the airmen started putting them on their uniforms. Not only did the airmen,
right.
like, I mean, big picture A airmen, right? The
Yeah,
enlisted branch started just putting them on their uniform. And there was nothing that could be done because nobody was holding standards, right? And so they
right.
said, "Hey, this is not something that we're going to bite the bullet on. So let's go ahead and just change the regulations to match what these guys are doing." And so
Well,
it was a
and I
destructive path of we're now
yeah,
dictating.
and they did do it in a sense of trying to get it to be because there were some really messed up ones out there. I know that for a fact,
Hmm.
but they did try to get it to be more
Morale
in a
patch.
professional
Yeah.
line.
There was a duty identifier
Um,
patch and then morale patch, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right. Yeah.
But it was
But
non-uniformity is what was happening.
right.
Hmm.
And again, that all happened after my term. But from what I saw, because I've been, even after I retired, I've stayed in a military oriented job,
Hmm. Yeah, you're
you
still
know.
actively working side by side with military.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where it's like I'd come through base and see a young white dude with a Grizzly Adams beard,
Hmm.
and it would just drive me batty because it's like, okay, the regs still state you're supposed to have some kind of waiver,
But
and it's supposed to be trimmed and neat.
the reg doesn't mean
But that
anything
was
if
the
no one's going
thing.
to hold it up,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And you and I had that conversation. It's
Yeah.
like you can't have a senior
You
a
can't
senior
enforce anything
NCO.
that people aren't going to hold, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
that stems from fucking 100%, that stems from weak fucking leadership. Weak
Top
ass
down,
leadership from the whole
all the way from the
pains.
top.
Yes, the whole
Yeah.
piece was nobody was willing to actually set their foot down and fucking be that person. We ain't fucking doing
Right.
this. Correct this shit now, or it's your ass. That's how the military
W
works. Historically, that's what you do. Fix this now, or it's your ass.
right. Well, and let's be honest, the Air Force turned into a big social experiment,
100%.
you know.
I
What
egress from
that
that shit. I'm like, I'm not fucking doing this anymore. Retirement.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't
and
need to
you
put
got
up
out
with
of
this.
the
That was a big reason for me to get out. I don't need to put up with this bullshit anymore. I'm gonna get out before I say the wrong thing, holding a standard, and get an Article 15 punishment for it, right?
yeah,
Because
because I
because
hurt somebody's feelings.
because I hurt someone's feelings. And trust me,
Yeah.
I was the guy who constantly was mentioned in those oh so great DOC surveys. This guy's a fucking asshole. He's mean. He fucking concentrates on me. I was the guy where my dudes would go to IG and file a complaint. And 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in the commander's office reading these comments, these reports, and getting questions. Did you say this? Did you say that? Has this occurred? And I would sit there and say, yeah, absolutely, I said that. You know, because what I was
Yeah.
doing was holding, for instance, a particular circumstance I can cite. I was holding my staff sergeant accountable to being a staff sergeant, right? He did not like that. And so he constantly rebelled against it, which means I held him harder to the flame of being a staff sergeant. You can
Yeah.
better yourself, dude.
Yeah.
You ain't bottom tier fucking person, man. You're an NCO. You're gonna get a treatment like you're an NCO. And if you're not being accountable to being an NCO, I'm gonna fucking hold you accountable to it. You know, people
Right.
don't like that.
Yeah.
I ended up demoting him. He was no longer an NCO after a few months, right? Because he couldn't
Yeah.
hold to it, right? But
Right.
there were very few around me that would hold that same fire, that would hold that same level,
Yeah.
right? But there's a point to where if you're the only fucking guy doing it, if you're the only person doing that, you get tired of it. You're the only guy doing
Yeah.
it, man. What's the purpose?
Well,
You know, it's pointless. If you're the only guy, it's fucking pointless. Why continue to put up with this?
yeah.
I'm eligible for retirement. Why am I fucking still doing this? I love what I do, but I don't have to put up with this bullshit.
Right. Well, and to show the differences between your generation and my generation, when I was a tech sergeant running a shop, you know, I was lauded because I was holding everybody to the standard. My shop
Right.
was top
Right.
tier. You know,
Not the
you win
case
all
with
kinds
me,
of
dog.
rewards.
I was a master
Yeah.
sergeant and I was getting all kinds of fucking bad feedback because I was holding my dudes accountable.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So that's just shows the difference in the generation
Yeah.
is
There's
I was
there's a
given
term there's a term that
awards
I came
and
across in the upper leadership, and that was terminal, right? And we referred to he's a terminal tech sergeant, he's a terminal staff sergeant. I was a terminal master sergeant. There was no
yeah.
possibility of me making any more rank because of the way that I was, because of the
Right.
severity of the way that I was. I was so
Right.
counter progressive movement in the military that it
Yeah.
rubbed everybody. I was the sandpaper chafing everyone's asshole.
Right.
Gladly, happily
Well,
was.
to segue into that though, look at it now. Now all those
Where are we?
standards are being
Right.
reinforced.
And people are
Yeah.
freaking the fuck out. People
Right.
are finally
Everybody's
being held accountable. And that's not just in the
yeah.
military. That's like within government structure, right? But
Right.
largely we're talking military, Steve. People are finally being held accountable and they're crying. They're not able to operate,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
fuck,
And
dude, we talk about resiliency. You know what resiliency is? You've been through this stupid shit, right? That's not a new term.
resiliency training.
There was a point in time. Let me think. This was about the time the big earthquake hit in Japan when I was stationed in northern Japan. So this was right around 2011. We had this thing come down that was resiliency training, right?
Right.
And an idea behind it in the very first development of it was we in the Air Force are going to focus on developing our skills to go through difficult times and be able to not have it affect us negatively and come out stronger, right? And that was the idea behind it.
Right.
But what ended up happening was we would go into these little classes and we'd sit down as groups and we'd say, okay, guys, we're going to talk about resiliency today. How are we going to be resilient? And we would talk about resiliency, right? Fast forward several years, and I would walk into like the chief's office, be chief, man, this resiliency shit is fucking bullshit. We're telling them about resiliency. We're talking about resiliency. How the fuck is anyone practicing this bullshit? Right? Because I would have airmen go get a fucking splinter and want to go to the fucking ER for it. Like, dude, just pull it out. Stop being a
Yeah.
bitch. Right? Like,
Yeah.
granted, that's my own personal, but the aspect of developing how to go through difficult situations and not having it cripple you is a key element to being an effective military unit branch member, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're at war and you've come across a situation that's difficult, when you're getting fucking mortars fired at you like I have, when you have rockets flying over at your head like I have, when you have small arms from the distance, not directly, not like fucking close for me, but small arms fucking rounds hitting your fucking tools and shit like I have, you proceed. You have to, because the other option is, hey man, someone's gonna die, you or them, right?
Yeah.
And so you
Yeah.
have to fucking succeed out of those situations, you know?
Yeah.
So if you are not used to going through those situations, as soon as you're put into a situation like that, if your automatic is to just collapse, sorry, dude, you're not effective. Our military is
Yeah.
weak, and we're demonstrating that right now, how weak our military actually is. That scares the
Well,
shit
I
out of
think it's a
me.
very let me I want to make it abundantly clear. I think it's a very small majority
I could agree with that.
that are
I
complaining.
can agree with that.
I think that I think that you have those vocal people, those ones that are vocal online or whatever. But
The
I
loud
still think
voices.
that our yeah, but we need to get because like one of the other things that just blew my mind was did you see the 2A merger?
Uh, I saw something affecting the
Because
2A field. The 2A field, for those that don't know, are the maintenance career fields, the aircraft maintenance career fields. So I
right,
don't know what the
yeah,
merger is though. No, I just know something's
okay, so
affecting them.
I'll just do a real quick overview. So aircraft maintenance is broken down into crew chiefs and specialties. You know, each specialty you have
In mine,
engines,
I fucking
hydraulics,
directly work on it
electronics.
as a 2W.
Right. Yeah. So and they're in my career field, which was engines, we were specific to turboprops, you know, C-130s or helicopters.
Hmm.
You have some that are specific to heavy aircraft, you know, like C-5s and C-17s, and then you have some that are specific to fighters. Corey was fairly specific to fighters and bombers.
Fighters and attack
Um,
and bombers. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what they're proposing currently is that you get rid of all those specialties. You are just now an aircraft mechanic. And for the first few years, while you up until you make senior airman or whatever, you just learn maintenance, just general maintenance. You don't learn anything specific to um, a specific aircraft or anything of that nature. It's just general maintenance. And then after that, you get to pick there's two career paths. You can go to a specialty, or I believe it's you pick a specific specialty, or you can just stay general maintenance. And only specific people get to pick a specialty. So it's like the top 10% actually get picked to go to a specialty. Like you get to go be an engine mechanic, or you get to go be a hydraulic mechanic or something of that nature. And then the other path is you go to a specific aircraft. So you can pick like C-130s or F-15s or something of that nature. But basically, you're just going to have a big pool of maintainers that know nothing about anything
Because
specific.
they're always changing, going to something new,
Right.
never
Right.
developing a set skill.
Right.
Right.
So this is apparently going to happen. This isn't just in talks. This is how they're going to be moving forward with aircraft maintenance now. Mind you, the Marine Corps and the Navy, I think, kind of do this same principle. But what made the Air Force so specific was because you could call an engine troop, and you knew that engine troop had a
Glorious
million
amount of
hours on that
information.
engine.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Now you're going to have a problem, and nobody's going to ever have seen this problem before.
Hmm.
Because, like you said, there's so much churn that you're going to get a guy that spent the past 3 years at
That's an
an F
interesting
15
piece
base.
because, like, for me, like, as a 2W working on fighters, like, for instance, working on F-15 Cs and Ds as a weapons troop, right? I would have impounds assigned to me where an aircraft would have an incident and it would get impounded for a reason. It could not fly. This thing had to get fixed and it had to be investigated, right? So I'm doing this whole big level of investigation on things. And sometimes it's engine stuff, sometimes it's flight control stuff, sometimes it's just a hydraulic system or just an electrical system. It doesn't matter, right? Every time I would have to have an impound responsibility for something outside of my career field, I had to try to learn as the senior evaluator on all of these objects that system in its
Yeah.
entirety to make sure that everything was covered. Do you know how fucking hard that is? Like not
Oh
having
yeah,
not having
yeah,
that knowledge and then having to learn a new system. So much so that every time there was a weapon specific impound, they never went out to non 2W1 individuals because the learning curve was so drastic that a
right,
lot couldn't handle that, right?
yeah,
Most couldn't handle that learning curve. And so
yeah,
there's a reason we have specialties, right? Even the Army has specialties. I mean, they have they don't call them AFSCs, they call them um,
MOSs,
they, even the Army has MOSs, but they do still routinely get tasked outside of their MOS, right? And
right,
so
yeah.
I think that would be an effective future, right? Still have the AFSC, still have the career field itself to attain that knowledge, but that doesn't mean you can't get tasked outside of that career field. But man, I can't imagine an engines troop. I can't imagine a greasy fucking wrench turning crew chief going and doing fucking engine bay maintenance shit.
Well,
Because
and
they're
that's
too
the thing,
shoddy.
you know.
The culture's too different.
Yeah. Well, and I think they're trying to get rid of that though. Whereas, so they tried this in the early aughts with the engine career field,
Hmm.
where they combined all the engine troops. You were
I
just
remember
an engine
this.
troop,
Yeah, I remember this.
um,
And you started getting
and it
people
was
from
a
other
significant.
platforms and they didn't know shit.
Yeah, it was a significant failure because of that. You
Hmm.
would get a staff sergeant that had worked on F-15s for his whole career come to C-130s and not know anything, but is expected to be able to sign off red X's and do all this other stuff, but he knows nothing about the engine,
Hmm.
you know?
I think
So it's like,
they were still dealing with this when I separated with the avionics career field. I think it was avionics.
right.
Because
Yeah.
people
I
would
think
just get to a
avionics
new
is still
duty
doing it.
location and be like, I don't know fucking
Yeah.
shit about this airplane. Of course, the weapons
But
troop, we don't have that.
the,
We don't have as weapons troop, like we have a smaller viewpoint on things because we're the
right,
armament systems of that aircraft, but we have to learn the armament systems of every fucking aircraft, right?
right,
Whether we work them or
right,
not. Yeah.
right. Well, and that was, I think, kind of their thinking, but ultimately it backfired bad enough that within 5 years they went back to the shred outs.
Yeah.
They went back to, okay, you're working just F-15s,
Hmm.
you're working at C-130s. There's no more jumping around because they realized how badly
Sometimes you got to do it.
it
Sometimes you got
worked.
to light the shit on fire to see if it's flammable or not, you know?
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, so I think it's going to be a significant. I think it'll be a failure that within 10 years we're going back to the shred outs.
It probably won't take 10 years. We have a
Yeah, that's what
system
I'm
in
saying. Within
development,
10 years.
right? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you got 5 years. The immediate feedback's going to be felt, going to be, you know.
Well, the biggest thing. Well, no, because I think they're going
No,
to
you're
have
right. It's
to.
not going to be immediate because there's an implementation and then the movement. Once you implement it, people still
Well,
have to PCS around.
and the thing is they've said if you're already in and you're in a specialty, they're not going to move you. You'll
Mm.
stay in that specialty. This is all got to build up. So you're talking 10, 15 years
Mm-hmm.
before this really starts being felt across the board.
Mm.
You know what I mean? To where all the old timers now start to filter out
Yeah.
and they lose that
Yeah.
experience.
You know, I've it's this is a really good this is a segue. It's a different topic slightly, but this is a really good piece to key into it on it and tie it in. Um, I did some time working with the Indian Air Force on a trip we did over there. We got locked into this little tiny fucking bubble, and we started working side by side with the Indian Air Force. And the way that they operate is it was so radically different to how I'm used to seeing operations flow, but they made it happen, right? But I looked at so many things and said, that's so ineffective. That's so ineffective. That's so ineffective. You have no way of uh making changes on the fly, right? It would be detrimental to your
Right.
whole plan, right? And you know, we used to say something like, how the fuck did it go? The unknown or the variables is key to aircraft maintenance or something like that, right? It's key to mission success. But the way that the Indian Air Force did it is they pieced together crews of individuals that were specific with their specialty knowledge, right? And so you would have like one avionics troop paired with one uh, APG troop paired with one weapons troop, right? And it would be these 3 or 4 guys that were teamed together, and they would be responsible for 3, 4, or 5 airplanes, right? And they would go out in their team and they would perform the maintenance together and everything that needed to happen on those few aircraft, right? And but those were they owned those aircraft. Those were their aircraft. And depending on the job that they were performing, dictated who was in charge of the operation. So
Right.
it's really, really interesting. And you got to their rank structure in the Indian Air Force totally fucking different because it's crazy, dude. I met this fucking dude was like an E3, but he was 56 years old. It was insane, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, the Saudi Air Force was that way as well.
Hmm.
I worked with them for a bit.
Yeah, they don't have what is that? The Indian in India, they used to have the tier system, right? What is that? I don't remember the
The
caste system.
cast.
That's what it is. That
Yeah.
still is largely in effect with the military that they have. So we don't
Right.
have a
Yeah,
concept
it's
of
the
that, but
same.
they still have that. It's leftover stuff from that. But it was really interesting
Yeah.
that they have these crews of specialty knowledge that are pieced together and sent out together to perform all these maintenance tasks together.
Yeah.
So that somebody
Yeah,
always has
so
that knowledge.
yeah. And I think that ultimately we 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 will see, one way or the other. We will see down the road. But back to the main story at hand. um, the differences in it seems like we're doing a 180. We're circling back around
Hmm.
to the military of yours and my
Hmm.
time
The early
of
days, yeah.
enforcing standards,
Hmm.
becoming more lethal, and things of that nature.
And that may just be a
Um,
cycle, right? That just might be a. I wonder if, like in the late 70s, early 80s, if the military was really relaxed like it is right now, and then it got tightened up in the late 80s, you know?
well, we were post Vietnam at that
Right.
time, so yeah. I mean, the thing is with us when I came in '91, we were just right after Desert Storm, um, and then we were cool till September 11th.
Hmm. Right. You
So
didn't have conflicts
you
for a
know,
long time right then.
yeah. I mean, we had the Panama and Grenada and things like that, but
Hmm.
nothing specific that was,
It wasn't a
uh,
fucking 2 decades at
a
war.
desert. Yeah, Desert Storm was the biggest one, and then we had Africa, which I was part of,
That's cool.
in Somalia and everything. Um, but those were all little skirmishes. They weren't, a massive conflict.
Hmm.
So, but then September 11th happened, and the whole world changed.
Yeah, sure did.
But then we kind of forgot about that 15 years later. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that the military is going to start dwindling its focus on personal feelings and individualism,
Yeah.
and go
Yeah, I
back
agree.
to, hey man, everyone's treated the fucking same. Ain't no
It's
one
it's a
fucking
team
special
effort.
here. You all joined. It's all
Yeah.
gonna suck together. Join hands, unify.
Yeah. You even bring up a good point. We all volunteered for
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Now,
You
everyone has their
know,
own individual reasons, and I loved hearing people's individual reasons. Hey, why'd you join? Why'd you
yeah.
join? Why'd you join? Oh, I wanted to serve. Patriotism. I needed to get away from a situation. I fucking hated where I was at. I was only destined for failure in my life. This is all I could do to fucking get out of that situation. I love it. Court ordered. I'm in here because it was the judge said prison or military. Like I love the situations for people, but
Yeah, but you still
everybody
picked.
came in. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody came in. Right.
Yeah. It's an all volunteer force.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody that's pissing and moaning now, you volunteered for this shit.
Mm-hmm.
you know and anybody that comes in and says, well, I didn't realize that this what the bullshit.
It's the
you know
military. I didn't realize I was gonna be
yeah.
shot at. The fuck?
Or I didn't realize I was going to be told what I could and couldn't wear, or how I had to cut my hair, or
Right,
whether or not I could grow a fucking beard.
right.
Just fucking whatever. Sorry.
Says the guy with no
But yeah,
beard and
that's
no hair.
well, I got a beard now, but it's really gray, so you
Yeah,
can't really
I
see
don't
it.
see it. It's just scruffy.
uh all right, man. Well, I think that I've pretty much covered my rant for today.
Yeah, I like that. That was a good one.
Yeah.
Next time we
Um,
can talk about other subjects like retiring from an overseas location, getting your foreign driver's license, things like that. other
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
tidbits.
Yes, I'm all about it.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us again, everybody. You've been listening to Not Too Old Timers. Please like and subscribe. Hit that bell notification to be notified when we upload new episodes, probably once every 8 or 9 months.
Let's get a little bit shorter than that.
uh,
That's funny.
uh,